Raphael Zwalen with the Swiss News Agency. I have a question on the last night's trilogue on the steel safeguard measures. And are you already negotiating with third countries like Switzerland for new TRQs? And if yes, what is the state of play of these negotiations? Thank you.
Thank you. Indeed, we had good news last night, Olaf.
Yeah.
Tell us about it.
Thanks, Raphael. So, yes, indeed, we reached a good outcome at last night's trilogue on the new measure to protect the EU steel sector. As part of that measure, there will be negotiations with all our free trade partners in order to determine specific quotas for them. Those discussions have already been happening in the build-up to the measure, because we want to be as transparent as possible with our partners in terms of what we want this measure to do and what we don't want it to do, and indeed those discussions will continue. I can't provide more details at this stage, but there is a time limit here, so we need to make progress on this as soon as possible.
Other questions to Olaf? I see a question online. Not sure it's for Olaf. Let's check. Florent Servia.
Hi. No, this is a question for Anna Geisa, actually.
Okay. So if no, there's still a question for Olaf there. Yes, go ahead.
Olaf, Daniel, Neue Zürcher Zeitung. Just another question about the steel agreement. You talk with trading partners or with countries you have a free trade agreement?
We talk with everyone who will be affected by this measure. Quite simple. With WTO members.
Not only with countries
with WTO members. With WTO members.
With WTO members. Not only countries with a free trade agreement.
With WTO.
Okay.
Good. Other questions to Olaf? Nope. We change topic. Yes, please. Sandor.
Thank you for the floor. Hungarian Prime Minister-elect Peter Magyar said yesterday during a press conference that he will have a phone call the same evening with President von der Leyen and talk about the possible release of blocked funds for Hungary. He also mentioned the 4-point plan to release those funds. So can you tell us, please, what was said during the phone conversation yesterday between President von der Leyen and Peter Magyar, and how you see the possible timeline to release those funds? Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. So there was no phone call yesterday, actually. I understand there could be a call sometime today. So if there's more to report from that phone call, we'll definitely let you know. Now, what I can say, and you heard it already directly from the President herself, she had been in contact with the Prime Minister-elect already on the evening of the elections on Sunday, and they agreed to cooperate closely to the benefit of Hungary, to the benefit of the whole of the EU, and as also reiterated by the President herself yesterday in her address to the press, we are engaging with the new government as of the night of the elections, but of course continue also to engage with the outgoing administration as necessary. And when it comes to the various files, and there are many, and I know that there is a lot of interest on what will be the next step on the various subjects, topics. Well, there we listened attentively also to the first press conference after the night of elections yesterday by the Prime Minister-elect. We listened to his commitment to the EU and to a number of policies that we share. And now we, as also the President said yesterday, there is a lot of work to be done. We are ready to work with the new government in order to swiftly advance on all the various fronts. But of course, the first step will come from the new government itself, and we will be taking it from there. Sandor, you want to have a follow-up?
Yes, it's not related to the new government but to Hungary, so I would go ahead. How is it going with this internal investigation about the issue of the Hungarian permanent representation trying to, allocate spies into these institutions? Are there already findings, and is this somehow related to the position of Oliver Várhelyi, who was at that time, permanent representative?
Let's see with Balázs if we have any updates to that internal work. Balázs.
Small update. Good afternoon indeed. So as you say, the Commission launched an internal investigation in October 2025, and what I can confirm is that progress has been made, and the Commission will inform the Parliament once all administrative steps are completed. Now, for operational reasons, of course, and to ensure the confidentiality of the process, we have no further comment to make on this internal operational security matter.
With some update there. Further questions now to Balázs, since we have Balázs here with us. Yes.
Тетяна Висоцька, Українська правда, Європейська правда, Ukraine. I've got a follow-up on accountability. Before the election, there was the information that Péter Szijjártó, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Hungary, transferred secret documents to Russia via Hungarian embassy. Is the European Union going to make some investigation on in this field? As we know, President von der Leyen wanted to talk on this topic with other leaders. Maybe some talks already happened. Maybe she wants to talk to Orban, as he is still ruling the country, and he will be present at the informal council in Cyprus. So what are the what's happening on this field? Thank you.
Well, and as we said on this topic last week, we expressed our serious concerns in relation to these allegations, and at that occasion we also said that the President wanted to raise this with the leaders. It wasn't specific whether it would be at the occasion of the informal council or not, but to my knowledge, there has been no change to this intention. Other questions to Balázs? Yes?
Vitaly Sizov, Freedom. Maybe you have some updates on preparation for loan for Ukraine. Maybe you have some new data, and have you felt any changes after election in Hungary in this regard? Thank you.
Thank you for this, indeed. So allow me to recall our position on this extremely important matter. So as we've stated before, there was an agreement at the level of the EU leaders, an agreement involving all the 27 member states, and we of course expect all EU leaders, all member states to abide by their commitment, and we remain committed to making the first disbursement as part of this package in the course of the second semester of this year. And if I may recall what the President said, she said that we will deliver on the loan one way or another. Now, important pieces of the package have already been put in place. We saw the setup of what we call the Ukraine support loan. That was one instrument, a crucial one. And also we modified the Ukraine facility. These were done already in February. And then, as I mentioned before, we've got about 3 more documents at this stage to adopt. 3, not 4, because we already adopted the Ukraine financing strategy, which allows us to set out how much we are going to provide to Ukraine, to what purposes, via which channels. On top of that, we'll have to finalize, there's already an ongoing strand of work on this, but we have to finalize the memorandum of understanding, which will underpin the macro-financial assistance channel of this package. Then we have to update the Ukraine plan, which underpins the Ukraine facility, which again will be an important channel through which we're going to provide budget support to Ukraine. And given that this package is based on a loan, as usual, we have to draft a loan agreement, and work is ongoing. We have a lot of contacts with our Ukrainian counterparts, and we are proceeding as quickly as we can.
Thank you. Yes, still to Balázs? Yes.
Hi, Leah Hillebrand from ARD. Just a quick question. You said we remain committed to make a first disbursement in the which semester?
In the course of the second semester.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions to Balázs? There.
Hi, Camille Condessu from AFP. Perhaps back on the frozen loans for Hungary. I was just wondering, how fast could the loans be unfrozen? Are we talking? Are we expecting actual bills to be adopted? Is it if there's some sort of like first goodwill gestures? What type of timeline are you guys looking at? Thanks.
We're talking about Hungary, if I understand well, huh? Yeah. Okay, look, so maybe this allows me to more broadly recall how much is at stake, but of course I will speak with some limitations given that I'm not in charge of all the funding. So at the moment, around 17 billion euro are blocked. Part of this is under the cohesion policy, and part of it is under the resilience and recovery facility. We have about 7.6 billion euro under the cohesion policy blocked, and around 10.4 under the RRF. Now, if you dig into it further, you will see that the funds are blocked for various reasons. So, for example, I'm in charge of the conditionality regulation, where we have a council decision. At that time, at the end of 2022, it led to the blocking of a certain amount of money. It was around just over 6 billion euro. And, for example, here we are looking at concerns that relate to the rule of law in this particular member state, which concerns which have an impact on the EU budget or on the financial interests of the European Union. So you're looking at subject matters like public procurement, also concerns related to essentially academic freedom matters, or asset declarations of public office holders. So, for example, these are the broad subject matters that we usually refer to when we summarize what types of concerns need to be looked into. And then we have the RRF, where I allow Maciej, my colleague, to catch you up on the details.
And the more we speak about the subject, the more questions we get, not surprisingly. Yes, go ahead, in the back.
Hello, thank you very much. Thomas Mandelson at Euractiv. Just one quick question first. I think maybe I misheard, but the goal to disperse the loan, is the objective to disperse it in the second quarter of this year? Or I heard second semester, if you could clarify that. Thanks.
Second quarter, so making the first disbursement in the second quarter, right, of course. We will not disburse it all in the second quarter, but the idea is to start disbursing in the second quarter.
Thank you. So that's a very important clarification, of course, Balázs, and I would add as soon as possible, because we do know that the clock is ticking. So on our side, of course, doing everything we can to be able to disburse as soon as possible. You have a follow-up?
Yes, sorry. Two more questions. One maybe a little bit technical, but regarding the Ukraine plan for the Ukraine facility, is this necessary in order for the loan to be dispersed? Because my understanding is if all the other documents are in place, the money could still be dispersed as long as the money flows through the MFA. So if you have the memorandum of understanding and all the other documents you listed, you don't necessarily need the Ukraine plan to be approved in order for the first disbursement to be made. I don't know if is that true. And then second of all, on a slightly different topic, Peter Magyar said yesterday that he wants Hungary to join the euro at some point. I don't think he gave a date, but could you maybe comment on that as well? Thank you very much.
Good. Yeah.
Your first question is indeed technical. My take on this is that all the 4 documents that I mentioned have to be in place for us to start disbursing. I will double check this, but that is my understanding. And on the subject matter that you raised regarding the euro, so let me just recall that all member states except Denmark, which negotiated an opt-out agreement, are legally committed to join the euro area, but of course it's up to individual countries to calibrate their path towards the euro, and no timetable is prescribed. The European Commission provides its assessment of the progress of non-euro area member states have made towards adopting the euro through a convergence report, which is prepared every 2 years, as you know, and last time around it was prepared in June 2024, so there will be another report coming up this year in the course of the summer, and of course we can refer to numerous benefits that come with the adoption of the euro, and we are confident that this is a project that is worth being pursued.
Thank you. Yes.
Petra, Austrian National Television. Just to follow up on that, just to get some clarity, because there have been different interpretations, whether there could be sort of a quid pro quo, as in Peter Magyar unblocks the loan to Ukraine and gets the unfrozen billions. So could this be in any way the case? And the second question is the Commission considering or planning to do it like it was done with Poland? Because Donald Tusk, I think about 10 weeks after he assumed office, got, I think it was like 6 billion ahead of time, even without doing some of the reforms. So is the Commission considering or even planning to do that in this case, that if Peter Magyar promises to do the right reforms, that he already gets some of the money?
Think on this and in general. The President was clear yesterday. We've listened attentively to the first words of the Prime Minister-elect, and we have confidence that indeed a lot will happen in terms of what needs to be done, notably to unblock the funds. But of course now we need to see action. It's very, very early in the process. It hasn't been 48 hours since we had the first results and then the outcome of the election. So it's really too early. Let's give the Prime Minister-elect time to settle and to come forward with concrete proposals, and then we'll be able to discuss how we will be taking it further. Let me go to my left, otherwise I'll be accused of only looking in that direction. David, go ahead.
Thank you, David Carretta, Radio Radicale. It's a follow-up, but on the RRF. I don't know if
Is with Maciej. Let me just make sure that there are no further questions for Balázs. Mose?
Back to the elections. I mean, on Sunday, as you know, OSCE, the Office of Democracy and Human Rights, they published a preliminary statement on the elections, and if not have read the report, but it reads more or less as last time in 22. With the same problems, and the observation was that most of the recommendations from last time has not been implemented by the previous Orban government. I would like to ask if you have any comment on that. And related to the previous questions about the release of EU funding in the near future by the second quarter, as you said, I know that election law and election system in Hungary is very cumbersome, and according to the European Court of Justice, not even free. It discriminates, for example, against minorities, especially the biggest minority, which is the Roma as a minority. I wonder if you think that the Commission might also consider those observations in the report, or you're going to wait for the final report, which is used to do. But that will take some months, I'm afraid. So my question is, in short, can reforms even of the election system in Hungary be considered in the decision on the release of air funding to Hungary? Thank you.
I didn't want to interrupt you. This will not be for Balázs either. And I guess, as said, it's maybe too early to reply to your question. First, we would need to see the reforms and then act on those. So let me just again make sure there's no more question for Balázs. Jorge, is it for Balázs?
Yes, it's on the Ukraine loan, maybe perhaps more for you. We know that so far the conversation about the loan has been shaped by Viktor Orban in his demands regarding the Druzhba pipeline. Some weeks ago, you offered to send an inspection to the Druzhba pipeline organized by the Commission, and you also offered to pay for the repair of Druzhba with EU funds. Are these two offers still applicable after the elections? Do you intend to go ahead, or do you think Druzhba is now a question in the past? Thank you.
Thank you, Harry. Listen, the offers still stand. Now, we also hear President Zelensky saying that the repair works should be done and finished. I can't remember what was exactly the timeline that he gave, but he gave perspective in terms of when these repairs should be concluded, and he offered a perspective for resuming the oil going through that Druzhba pipeline. So we are also looking into that and looking into the progress in terms of reparation of the pipeline. Good. If no other questions to Balázs, then we come back to you, David, on RRF, and let's see if there's anything we can say there, because again, the general caveat applies.
Of course. Thank you very much, Paola. David Carretta, Radio Radicale. So I think that it's a more urgent question, the RRF, because there is a deadline at the end of August to make a payment request. I will try not to enter in speculative scenarios, but can you remind us which are the super milestones that Hungary should implement, or at least make a commitment, because for Poland was a commitment, to unblock the fund? And are you monitoring the implementation of the national plan of Hungary, since my understanding was that the government that is still in place for the moment was implementing part of the plan or the plan. So are you able to say how much has been implemented of that plan? Thank you.
Yes, David, so you're absolutely right. When it comes to next generation EU funds, the clock is ticking, and is ticking very quickly towards the summer this year. So, Maciej, if you can give us a recall of where we are with Hungary on these funds.
Yes, thank you, David. Thank you, Paula. Good afternoon, everybody. So indeed, for Hungary to access the RRF funds, as you rightly pointed out, they have to meet the so-called super milestones. There are 27 super milestones which are defined in the Council implementing decision, I think from 2022, which at the same time approved their recovery plan. So we have these 27 super milestones, and as Balázs already mentioned, they are linked to the conditionality procedure. So to the breaches of the rule of law identified under this procedure. More generally speaking, and referring to the super milestones, Hungary has to demonstrate that it has can effectively protect financial interests of the Union and has strengthened its judicial independence. So this is a general description of the 27 milestones, which partly have been already implemented, actually. And as an example, I want to refer to the judicial reform which was implemented by Hungary in 2023. I say that they have been partly implemented, but we cannot assess it yet. We'll be able to assess it only once Hungary submits its payment request. In the first payment request, they will demonstrate the implementation of the super milestones and the relevant milestones for this particular payment request. So we suspect that some of the milestones, and we have seen some reforms already in the past, have been already met, but under the RRF procedure, we have not assessed it yet. You've also mentioned the recovery plan. As I said, initially the plan was approved by the Council in 2022, but we have not assessed any targets or milestones from this plan because Hungary has not submitted any payment request yet.
So again, in a nutshell, the ball is on Hungarian court. to activate also the procedures on our side for us to be able to move on. Yes.
Thank you, Gabriele Rosano, Il Messaggero, Italy. Following up on this, on the RRF and Hungary, just a technical question, because the milestones are a precondition for them to submit the payment request and for you to disburse the fund. But the clock is ticking, you said, Paola, and so those funds need also to be used by the 31st of August. 10.4 billion euros are quite an important sum to be used by the 31st of August, so I would like to know if you have, from a technical point of view, an assessment of whether that is feasible and if otherwise, given all the circumstances, Hungary can get an extension of the period concerned. Thank you.
Look, first of all, I want to say that there is no discussion about the extension, okay? The duration of the program is quite clear. It's defined by its legal basis, and it has to be concluded by the end of this year. And all milestones and targets have to be implemented by the end of August this year, and it also applies to Hungary, like to all other member states. Hungary has been implementing some milestones and targets from its plan. We know about some investments, some progress on the reforms. But as I said, we have not been able to assess it yet because no payment request has been submitted. What Hungary can do now, they can either submit a payment request for us to make this assessment, or perhaps, and I'm saying it's an option, they may want to review their recovery plan in order to streamline it and leave in the plan the reforms and investments which are feasible to be implemented by the end of August this year.
It's difficult, it's challenging. We do believe that if there is a way, there could be, if there is a will, there could be a way, but of course, again, we need to see how swiftly Hungary is able to go through the different steps. Roland.
Thank you very much, Roland Papid Nipsala. I have a follow-up on this, on reviewing the National Recovery Plan. Can you tell us a bit more about the details and what you see, and so do you expect that maybe the reforms which were in the original plan would be rewritten in this way, and what would be the procedure for that?
So look, we've been discussing with the still present administration about the revision of the plan. The revision has never been submitted so far. As I said, there is this option for Hungary to revise its plan. It's been in place since 2022, so there might be some reforms or investments which Hungary will consider not feasible to be implemented by the end of August, in which case it would make sense for them to review their plan. The plan has not been submitted yet. We are discussing with the present administration, with the new government, will be continuing this discussion in view of the deadline. So, of course, there is urgency behind this process. If Hungary wants to review and submit the revision of their plan, they have to do it as soon as possible, but we are ready there to support them in this process.
Good. Any more questions to Maciej? I see online. Is it for Maciej, Federica Bianchi?
Yes, it is. Thank you for taking my question. I was just wondering about the terms. You guys were saying that it's not possible to put them off, but I was wondering if there are other. I was told there are two other countries, Portugal and Ireland, that have had a delay for their plans, and that the same thing could be applied to Hungary. Isn't that true, or what? Or did I misunderstood? Thank you.
Thank you for your question. So, as I said, the deadline is set in stone. There is a legal basis for this. We cannot change the deadline. The program has to be concluded by the end of this year. And actually, all payment requests have to be submitted by September this year. We have to make all the payments by the end of 2026. I have already said from here that there are some options for member states to use these funds after the 2026, but there are some conditions attached to it. So there are some options which we outlined in the communication last year, Road to 2026. And I can name them again. I can mention them again here. So, for instance, member states can support the creation of financial instruments to incentivize private investment. They can transfer funds to National Invest EU scheme. They can make equity injections to national promotional banks, and they can make voluntary contributions to one of the EU programs which are aligned with the objectives of the RRF. All these options are possible. Of course, they have to comply with the RRF regulation requirements. Member states have to submit them in the form of their recovery plans. The Commission will make the assessment, and they have to be then approved by the Council. But there are these options available for member states to possibly use these funds after the 2026.
I see, and that is not surprising, a lot of interest, of course, on what are the procedures now in light of a new upcoming government in Hungary. Maybe what we will try to do is see if we can have a technical briefing where we could go in greater detail through all these questions rather than taking then the time from our midday. So I suggest that we move on from the questions on Hungary to the extent it concerns essentially procedures and how to move forward, and we can change to other topics. Okay. And I see, yes, maybe. No, let's keep it here. And your question, still Hungary?
Energy.
Energy. Okay. So we move on to energy. Thank you.
Is that okay?
Maciej, go ahead.
The question is, well, Johannes Perterer here, again, Austrian National Television. Will the European Commission address the looming jet fuel crisis in its energy package, which is supposed to come on April 22nd, as Europe's Airport Association warns of a supply shortage of jet fuels within 3 weeks, and airlines call for joint EU fuel monitoring and procurement?
Thank you. Yes, Anna Kaiser, on jet fuels.
To start with, there is no evidence for fuel shortages in the European Union at present, but supply issues could occur in the near future, in particular for jet fuels, as you mentioned. We coordinate very, very closely with our member states and the industry at the moment. There was an Energy Union Task Force meeting last Friday, which confirmed that crude oil supplies to the European Union refineries remain stable, with no need for additional stock releases at the present. However, and coming to the jet fuel situation that you mentioned, that remains our primary concern at the moment. EU refineries cover around 70% of EU's consumption, and all the rest comes from imports or is reliant on imports. So our job and our role at the moment is to coordinate and gather a full situational awareness and real-time information about the situation, which is why we are now convening oil and gas coordination groups on a weekly basis. And this is the forum where it is chaired by the European Commission, and we have representatives from member states as well as from industry at the moment. They can exchange on stocks, on refining capacity, and alternative import routes. And this very close, having a full awareness and visibility of what is happening in the member states is absolutely essential for us to take make any suggestions or take any measures. You asked about the communication that was announced by the President that is coming next week. Obviously not prejudging what is going to be in there. The work is now being finalized, and we're everybody looking forward to these measures to be unveiled next week. But of course, given that it will be a response to the ongoing energy crisis, of course, it will take a very holistic approach, but I will not make any speculation or single out any particular areas that it might or might not cover.
But indeed, let's watch closely what will come in this communication that the President confirmed for next week on energy. Other questions to Anna Kaiser? Yes, Florent, now we come back to you.
Hi, thank you. Today marks the deadline for the call for evidence on a targeted revision of the Water Framework Directive. And I'd like to take this opportunity to ask whether you're confident that member states will meet the target of achieving good status for all water by 2027. And if they are off track, what do we intend to do about it? Thank you.
It is correct. The call for evidence for the Water Framework Directive is actually still ongoing. It will finish today. And the Water Framework Directive for all the other spectators is one of our landmark directives to protect and improve the status of our waters. We are revising it and reviewing it this year. And for that purpose, we launched a call for evidence, a 4-week period, and that will then feed into the preparations of the review. So how confident we are obviously working always very closely. It is in our interest, it is in the interest of the member states that they meet these important targets and important benchmarks, but I will not prejudge any outcomes until we do our further analysis based on the input that we get from the member states.
Okay. Other questions to Anna-Kaisa? No. Other questions? Yeah. Jan.
Gian Papicelli, Bloomberg News. I have a question for Thomas about social media. Is it coming? It's coming.
Go ahead.
I will go ahead. Right? So, and then I'll follow up question on a different topic. So. I'm sure. The first one is whether anybody from the Commission will take part in President Macron's call about social media bans, which is slated for Thursday.
Yes, Jan. I can actually just now confirm indeed that the President will participate in the video conference organized and called by President Macron this Thursday. On social media. Sorry?
President level.
It will be the President herself.
Okay. Second question is about AI and Anthropic's, what's the name of the latest? I forgot the name of the new model that is being explored for cybersecurity applications. I'm just blanking it.
And will help us. Go ahead.
Yeah, my question is, I think we are aware that the Commission is in touch with Anthropic regarding the cyber offensive potential of its latest model. I was wondering whether there is any plan for EU institutions or EU-based companies to actually access the model as part of the same initiative that other American companies are part of, in terms of testing how this new AI model could be used to kind of pierce cybersecurity infrastructure on many websites and banks and whatnot. Essentially, are we also involved in securing our system apart from just talking with Anthropic?
Thanks, Jan. Mythos is the name. So indeed, we take note of the announcement by Anthropic. I mean, generally speaking, first, AI innovation, of course, offers a lot of benefits. And as always with technology, you have a certain number of risks that come with it. And here you could have potentially, indeed, cyber implications that can be quite big. So this requires a thorough assessment, both by the Commission, also hand in hand with Anthropic. In this regard, because you have two main pieces of legislation here that apply. You have the AI Act, you also have the Cyber Resilience Act. Now, in terms of next steps, we will first discuss this with Anthropic. Continue to discuss this. I can also tell you that there is a meeting today taking place between the Commission and Anthropic, and we will take it from there.
Jan, a follow-up?
Is there any mechanism that will allow the Commission to request access to Mythos in order to stress test European cyber infrastructure? Does the AI Act allow for that?
It's always easier to assess when you have access, indeed, to be able to stress test it. Now, good thing is that we have ongoing discussions with Anthropic, so we also rely on the company to give us additional information here.
Other questions to Thomas? I see a hand raised. Clara Gantley. Is it for Thomas?
Yes, hi, can you hear me?
We can.
Yes, I have a question regarding Commissioner Macron's meeting with tech CEOs in California this week. I see that there's no reference in what you've published in any discussion on the DSA, even though it's not its file. It's an understanding that Commissioner McGrath will not discuss the possible designation of ChatGPT under the DSI as a very large online search engine. So just to ensure I'm correct in understanding that.
Always delicate for us to prejudge on what the Commissioner will do and discuss. So the visit, and you're right, takes place today with a time difference. So we haven't heard back from our Commissioner yet. And once we do hear back, we will share with you what can be shared from those meetings. But difficult for us to say whether something will or will not be discussed. Other questions to Thomas?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, it's also a question for Thomas, also on Anthropic. So I understand that the Commission is talking with the company, but I don't really understand if there is any specific meeting organized that will be organized with organization. I know that the US, the Canada, UK are organizing meeting with the banking sector. Is the Commission is considering organizing similar events? And maybe just can you explain more like what will be the framework if the Commission is decided to do something toward this AI system? Thank you.
Thanks, Marie. I will frame it the other way around. It's not for the Commission to organize or to have an appropriate framework. It's first for the company, in this case Anthropic, to give us all the details that we need to be able to have a proper assessment. So the ball is actually on the other side.
Good. Thank you, Thomas. Other questions to Thomas? Nope. Yes, Alex.
Thank you. Thank you, Paula. Alexandra Boudouri with Καθημερινή. It's actually a question for you. I would like to ask you about the qualified majority voting in foreign affairs issues that the President suggested yesterday. We understand the political framework and the timing. She linked herself to the developments in Hungary. But I was wondering, is she just testing the waters, or should we expect any formal proposal on this anytime soon? Has she consulted perhaps with the President of the Council to table or raise this issue during the informal summit in Cyprus next week? Thank you.
Alexandra, so you're referring to something that the President said yesterday in her statement to the press, saying that in the context of, she was speaking in the context of, indeed, the elections in Hungary, and said that it is important to move to qualified majority voting in foreign policy as an important way to avoid what we have seen, which are systematic blockages to the decision-making process in the EU. It's not the first time that the President mentions this. She had already flagged it, raised it at the State of the Union last autumn, and we do see now more than ever momentum to have this discussion. There hasn't been any formal discussion as such, but indeed we are hearing also from others about this possibility. I can't give you any concrete occasion where this would be discussed formally, but clearly what the President yesterday also wanted to flag is that there is now increased momentum to discuss it. And so as soon as we have concrete next steps regarding this, Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Karina Müller from TVR Moldova. I have a question in this context and also this qualified vote. But first, in the context of enlargement for Moldova and Ukraine, and given the direct impact these blockages have had on Moldova's accession process, what are the Commission's expectations from the incoming Hungarian leadership when it comes to enlargement, and what actions will the Commission take in the coming weeks to help translate this political change into progress for Moldova alongside Ukraine? And please, if you can clarify about this qualified majority voting, could apply this to enlargement decisions? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Let me just start with your last question. So the President didn't specify, didn't single out enlargement. She mentioned referred to foreign policy. But indeed, when we think about where these blockages have been taking place, they also apply within foreign policy to enlargement. And as you know, in order to move on with the accession negotiations, we need unanimity to open the clusters, to close the clusters. So even though these are different legal basis, the fact is that we are also seeing blockages there, which are hindering a merit-based approach. That's the fact. We see countries making progress where, based on the merit, on their merit, we could see progress in the discussion about and on the negotiation path. Anything to add, Guillaume?
No. On this specific issue, I can come back to the other point. Yeah, okay. So regarding the enlargement process, as you mentioned, for Moldova and Ukraine, I can reaffirm again our clear message is that we have seen that Moldova and Ukraine are fully committed to the EU accession path. They have advanced on key reforms over the past few years. Also given, I mean, it's very impressive given the very changing context. They made really remarkable progress. So, as you know, both of them have already concluded the technical work for the opening of clusters. Our position is very clear, and we have expressed it already several times, is that both countries have done the technical work, and they are ready now for the opening of all clusters. So on our side, we have done all the preparation work, in a way. It's now for the Council to take a decision, and we're ready to support the Council if necessary, and really we call on the Member States to move forward on the matter.
Good. Other questions to Guillaume? No. Then I see still questions online. Noureddin, who has...
J'ai deux questions pour Anwar, si tu veux bien. Je voudrais savoir la réaction de l'Union européenne par rapport à l'embargo imposé par les États-Unis contre l'Iran dans les eaux internationales, enfin, en face de Détroit. J'ai bien entendu hier le speech de Madame von der Leyen, mais aussi les déclarations de Madame, le discours de Madame Kallas au Conseil de sécurité. Cet embargo n'a pas été mentionné. Quelle est l'attitude de l'Union européenne par rapport à ça? Deuxièmement, dans quelle mesure l'Union européenne pourrait participer, sinon pourrait aider la coalition qui est en train d'être montée par la France et la Grande-Bretagne pour protéger la liberté de navigation dans le détroit de Hormuz? Et peut-être une dernière remarque subsidiaire, est-ce que l'Union européenne sera représentée dans ce sommet qui aura lieu le vendredi, qui est convoqué par la France et l'Angleterre et la Grande-Bretagne sur cette question à Paris? Merci.
Oui, merci Noureddin. Et oui, tu l'as dit, et tu as fait référence aux déclarations de la présidente hier. Et en effet, elle a dit très clairement que l'ouverture de l'étroit de Hormuz est d'une importance cruciale. Et que sa clôture par contre, est en train de produire énormément de dégâts. More concretely, plus spécifiquement, Anwar, sur les autres éléments de la question de Noureddin.
Oui, bien sûr. Je commencerai peut-être par rappeler l'existant et l'écosystème dans lequel nous évoluons à la suite des pourparlers et des négociations qui se sont tenues à Islamabad. Nous saluons les efforts de médiation qui ont été déployés par le Pakistan. Nous, Union européenne, restons convaincus que la diplomatie est essentielle pour résoudre toutes les questions en suspens. Et nous contribuerons à tous les efforts diplomatiques en tenant compte de l'ensemble de nos intérêts et de nos préoccupations en coordination avec nos partenaires. S'agissant de la question de Noureddin et du détroit d'Hormuz, la situation actuelle, en effet, la fermeture cause d'énormes dommages et le rétablissement de la liberté de navigation revêt pour nous une importance capitale. Nous rejetons et continuerons de rejeter toute mesure ou arrangement qui entrave la sécurité maritime et qui limiterait la liberté de passage dans le détroit d'Hormuz, conformément au droit international. Ce qui se passe en effet aujourd'hui dans le détroit d'Hormuz constitue un appel très clair à ce jour en faveur d'une coalition internationale forte en matière de sécurité maritime. S'agissant des initiatives que nous voyons éclore et émerger sur le terrain, de nombreuses initiatives sont sur la table, mais les objectifs restent très simples, à savoir un passage libre et en toute sécurité pour tous les bateaux via cet itinéraire, le détroit d'Hormuz. Nous, Union européenne, nous saluons et avons salué toutes les initiatives annoncées par les États membres, y compris au moyen d'une coordination renforcée avec nos partenaires dans la région afin de garantir cette liberté de navigation dans les détroits d'Hormuz. Nous nous félicitons déjà de l'excellente coordination et du bon soutien que nous voyons avec nos opérations maritimes existantes, telles Atalanta et Aspides, et il est essentiel de maintenir et de renforcer cette coordination dans un environnement qui est, comme nous le voyons, volatile. S'agissant des annonces et des conférences à venir, je ne vais pas préjuger à ce stade de la participation ou de la dette, mais nous revenons vers vous quand on aura les informations à notre disposition. Mais je rappellerai que la haute représentante s'était déjà jointe à la vidéoconférence qui s'était tenue sous l'égide de nos partenaires britanniques. Et bien évidemment que nous continuerons d'être de manière très rapprochée, associés à toutes ces initiatives de la part de nos États membres et de nos partenaires.
Très bien, merci Anouar. D'autres questions pour Anouar? Très brièvement, parce que je veux encore essayer de répondre à deux questions qui sont posées pour Marcus. Je vois et donner la possibilité.
Yes, Paula, thanks again. I would like to ask a follow-up, also clarification about President von der Leyen's statement yesterday at the press conference following the orientation debate in the college. Okay, the main issue was, as no one mentioned, of course, the opening of the Strait of Hormuz, but she also said in the beginning of her speech that an agreement, a comprehensive agreement on ending all the war, I mean, should address both the nuclear and the ballistic missile programs of Iran. But she didn't mention, for some reason, the need to disarm Hezbollah, which, as they know, acts as a proxy for Iran in Lebanon. I wonder if that was a coincidence, or if that is still, I mean, the position of the EU, which you talked a lot about before, Anwar. And in that case, what exactly can be done in order to implement that? I mean, because until now, at least, it seems that the Lebanese army is too weak and underfinanced to carry out that mission. So what can be done to strengthen it in the, let's say, in the process between Israel and Lebanon? Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Indeed, the President didn't mention it explicitly yesterday, but she mentioned it several times that she has called, and not just called, she also lent all support to President Aoun's efforts to disarm Hezbollah. That goes without saying. So even if she didn't mention it again yesterday, absolutely, she sees the need to disarm Hezbollah in this process and lends all support to President Aoun. Good. As said, I would like to still take a final question for Marcus that I see signaled here since the beginning. So we'll call Marcus before we wrap up for today.
Right. I think I'm visible now. Thank you. Marcus, could you please provide an update on the negotiations for the enhanced border security partnership with the United States? Could you confirm if the deadline is still the end of 2026, and will that deadline be met?
Thank you very much for the question, Christine. Maybe as a reminder, the context: in December 2025, the Council agreed the negotiating mandate for a framework agreement between the EU and the United States for an enhanced border security partnership. And what's important to underline here is that it will be for member states to establish bilateral agreements for any exchange of information with the US. What the Commission is doing is that we are negotiating a framework agreement in which the overall parameters are being set out for this reciprocal information exchange, which will have to take place. The negotiations that we are doing are in particular focused on the inclusion of clear and robust safeguards on data protection that will have to be respected on both sides. Now, on the state of play of the negotiation, that's your question. I cannot give you a fixed timeline at the moment, as is normal for any negotiation, but what I can say is that the negotiations are ongoing and that they are progressing well. We had 3 rounds of technical level negotiations this year, starting in January, one in February, one in March. All have taken place in a cooperative and constructive atmosphere. And this is what I can say at the moment as regards the state of play. As a reminder, the Commission negotiates the overall framework, and member states will then have to do their own bilateral agreements based on the overall framework.
Thank you, Marcus. And last question goes to Dave.
Hello. I'm wondering why you cannot see me. Just a second.
Will it go to Maria? Yes, it
can
will.
You see me? Okay, sorry for this delay. And thanks for the floor, Paula. Maria Psara with FC Newspaper Greece. My question refers to the publication, the story we saw today, published by BBC. According to this story, the Greek police is using masked mercenaries to push back migrants across borders. I would like a first reaction to this story, and I would like to know if pushbacks are still illegal in the EU. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria, for the question. I have to say this is the first time I see any information on this story. As a general rule, individual cases have to be investigated by member state authorities. This is what's happening as a routine standard, and I will not be able to comment further here at this stage.